Radio Cardiff.
98.7 FM.
Good afternoon. You're listening to News, Views and Interviews on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM. I'm Jane Morris. Who are the happiest, most neighbourly, social and community-minded occupants in the UK? Well, a recent study has looked into country lane versus housing estate, block of flats versus cul-de-sac living to find out why. And the study by Street Club found that 80% of people think the location they live in contributes to how happy they are. So, how friendly are you with your neighbours, and how much does it have to do with where you live? TV architect George Clarke has met thousands of people living in all types of homes and areas, and he has an idea of who he thinks is living in a neighbourly paradise and why. That's quite a big introduction for you there, George.
A neighbourly paradise. I love the sound of that.
I know. It
I want to live there.
Yeah. So you don't live in a neighbourly paradise?
Yeah, but basically, this is a survey carried out by Street Club and B&Q, and it was commissioned basically to find out how people felt about the places that they lived in. And I mean, some of the things were fairly obvious, but what I was surprised by was just the number of people who said that community and community engagement was unbelievably important to them, even down to the level of just getting on with their neighbours. Mm-hmm. Now, that might sound obvious, but you'd be amazed at how often that just doesn't happen. And I think as we've gone into the 21st century and become kind of more obsessed, if you like, by global network sites, you know, all the social networking stuff that goes on Twitter and Facebook, sometimes we often lose sight about our neighbours and how important that they are and the people who live nearby to us. And I know from my own experiences, you know, when I've moved to different parts of the country, and quite often when you move in, you feel like you're a little bit of an outsider. You've got to really try and work hard to blend into that community. And if you go to the Street Club website, I think what the Street Club site does is really helps bring people together at a local level. It's a local community tool that enables all neighbours, wherever they live, whether it's urban or rural, to connect together in a really safe and convenient way. And one good thing for Cardiff and Wales generally is that Wales came out the absolute highest at 88%. 88% of people that were interviewed in the survey said that they get on well with their neighbours. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, whenever I go to Wales for film, man, everybody seems to get on and really seems to bounce off each other. And one other thing that they should be proud of is there was a competition done by B&Q actually not that long ago, which was to find the best neighbours in Britain, and a fantastic street in Ferndale in the Rhondda Valley one. And they got on so well. I went along to see them, and they'd come up with this great idea, great community project to come together and kind of change a bit of public space at the end of their street. And I think that's a great example of people getting on well, feeling safe, feeling secure. And when I went on the Street Club website this morning, and then I just think this is a brilliant example of how it can bring people together. So one guy went on there and said, I've taken the day off work, want to do a bit of maintenance on the house, and I've just realised that when I was just about to do all the gutters and clear the gutters, that my ladder's bust. Has anyone got one I can borrow? And a guy came back who was obviously on the Street Club site and had signed up as part of that group and that community. And this is a guy that I think he didn't know very well, but still lived in his local area. Said, yeah, I've got a ladder, mate. And actually, I've got the day off. Do you want a hand? So he pops around with his ladder, and also it's two people coming together to do something together and then getting on really well. Now, that is huge, I think, for a community. And to be honest, it's laying the foundations for communities getting on for such a long time. Because once you meet someone like that, if you get on well with him and he's being kind enough to help you out, he's someone that you'll ask for favours from all the time. And it becomes reciprocal, doesn't it? You both help each other out and get on well better for it.
And you become friends as well.
Yeah, exactly, which is huge. You know, and off the back of that, who knows how things can kind of spiral in terms of community engagement. So Street Club isn't just about street parties and people doing big events together. It's those tiny, small-scale things that can make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Maybe from your survey, I shouldn't be so surprised, but my street, I love my street, and I get on so well with all my neighbours, really. And
what's your street like? What's it like?
Well, it was a big, long street that's now been cut into 3 bits. So my end is, there's only houses on the one side because there's a school on the other side, so right. And it ends in a bit of a dead end. But I know pretty much all of my neighbours, apart from 1 or 2 new people who've moved in.
And what type of houses are they? Sorry, I'm interviewing you now.
That's fine. It's terraced, so...
And I think that's a great example of it. So you've got a lower scale terraced house where you're connected to other properties, and you're going to be walking down your street from one end to the other, passing people all the time. So from a very simple point of view, the urban planning of that street means that you're meeting people. Where if you live in a tower block, and you just turn up at the door of the lift, push the button, go open the lift, which is fairly anonymous anyway, let's face it, and quite often you don't feel very safe in there, get out of your lift, straight to your door, and let yourself in and shut the door behind you, and that's it. So, yeah, I think there's so many ways that whether you live in a rural community or an urban one, that street club would really help get people together.
I mean, the other thing that actually struck me, I mean, you mentioned there people in the blocks of flats are least happy, but all of the other ones, they have their own outdoor space. They've got gardens, they've got a bit of outdoor space, whereas in a flat you haven't.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the ways that you get to meet your neighbours is out in the garden.
No, absolutely, and talking over the garden fence, basically. And also I think in kind of larger public areas, so whether it's a park or whether it's a little public square where there might be a few shops, you know, those areas which become nicer places to be, if someone designs a good space, a nice space, they'll spend time there. If the car dominates on a major high street, or you've got buses rambling from one end to the other, and people sometimes just walk along with their heads down, just trying to get from A to B, without actually stopping and taking a breath. And I do think there's that problem in our culture that everything's moving so fast, and we haven't created urban spaces or rural spaces where people can just slow down, you know, and you can just sit for 5 minutes with a coffee and have a chat with someone alongside you. And I think that's the challenge, if I'm honest, for architects and designers and town planners and developers today, to get those spaces absolutely right, because we've lost sight of it, I think.
You've talked about the different types of properties and how well people get on with their neighbours and as a community. But do you think that the actual city or town or village where you live makes a difference as well?
It definitely does, because there's certain cities that you can live in where you feel completely anonymous. You know, I hear stories where people have lived in a house for 5, 6, 7 years and they don't even know their next door neighbours, which I think is a real shame, to be honest with you. I think even if you live in a big city, though, rather than being overawed by it, I mean, I live in London, you know, you can't get any bigger, really, it's absolutely huge. So I think of where I live, I think about my street, and I think of my area just being a village in itself, really. So I try and spend as much time as I can getting to know neighbours, going down to the local shops, having a pint in the local pub. I mean, I'm a newcomer to that area myself, to be honest. I've moved to my new street, if you like, back in September last year. So I'm right at the beginning, if you like, of making those connections. And I think that's where Street Club can come in, because you can basically go on there and register and define what you want your community to be. So if you live in a tower block, that could be your community. If you live in your street, your little terrace could be your community. Or it could be the entire street, or it could be the entire village or the entire town. You can decide yourself on the scale of that community and then invite people to join it. And I think it's a really simple way of people engaging with each other at a community level.
On the other hand, you've done quite a few TV programmes, particularly...
1 or 2.
Yes, particularly about empty properties. And a lot of those areas where you've got, you know, street loads of empty properties, they were really close communities at one point.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's really genuinely close to my heart. I mean, this is something that I'd wanted to get away with the channel and really push to raise public awareness, because it's a difficult project. It's complicated as well, to be honest with you, because there's lots of different reasons why houses are empty in different parts of the country. I mean, people might not know this and they might be staggered by it, is over 80% of all of Britain's empty homes are privately owned.
Yeah.
And I can't get my head around how, certainly today in the current economic circumstances, how can someone afford to own a house and keep it empty, not have it rented or not sell it? It's just mind-boggling, really. And then the other 20% is predominantly areas where there's been failed regeneration schemes. So there was a couple of mad ideas in the early noughties about clearing away the old Victorian housing stock and the old Victorian streets, demolishing them and creating nice new houses. Well, the reality to do that is unbelievably difficult. Where do these people move to? If you move them out of their terrace, where do they go to until the new house is built? And so there might have been a good idea in principle of let's create some new housing stock, but I think it was at the detriment of losing what I thought were pretty decent Victorian homes that some people would love to live in. It seemed very black and white to me. It was kind of like, right, let's just demolish the old, build the new, and everyone will be happy. Where actually the reality is we're not like that. People want a broader choice. I know a lot of people out there who would love to be able to afford a very small-scale Victorian property. Might need a bit of upgrading, you know, new electrics and new insulation and maybe some new windows. But these are houses that have stood for a long time that are still good quality homes. Yeah. And so I think we've got so many things wrong. And I mean, thankfully, I'm an advisor to the government now on empty homes and housing generally. And the government are making some really good steps about turning that around, because we've made some awful mistakes over the last 10 years.
But it's quite slow, though, isn't it?
Well, it is slow, but it's always going to be slow. I mean, solving the housing crisis is going to be like, I don't know, turning around the NHS or something. Do you know what I mean? It's a really difficult, slow thing to do, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't start doing it. As I say, what I'm trying to help the government on many things is getting empty homes back into use, putting in financial incentives, getting grant schemes away, setting up an empty homes loan scheme. But I'm also working with them on affordable housing and new build projects as well to try and get as many affordable homes into the system as possible, because if I'm honest, without it turning into a huge lecture, we've made so many mistakes since the 1970s. That's why we're in the crisis we're in now. I mean, for example, the right to buy scheme, which is a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
I think everyone's got the right to own their own home. And if someone owns their home, they stay there for a long time. So they engender a sense of community. But if that house has been sold off at a discounted rate, then the council hasn't got enough money in its coffers to replace it with another one. So I've been banging on about this for years. If we sell off a council property under the right to buy scheme, another one has to be built straight away to replace it.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is 1.5 million council houses have been taken out of the system since 1979. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. People just can't afford to get an affordable home, if that makes any sense, because they're not there.
Well, sadly, when the right to buy was set up, the councils weren't allowed to do what you're suggesting, were they?
No, and that's why it was ridiculous. And also we've had a mentality, since Thatcher, to be honest with you, of promoting the new build, developer spec-built suburban house, rather than dealing with some of the inner city housing stock. And as we know now, there's more people living in cities than rural areas across the world, so we need to be tackling that as well. For me, the whole thing's been a mess for the last 30 years, and it needs to be sorted out. And I think we're turning it. We're slowly starting to turn things around. On a positive note, I think we're being more ecological. I think we're building better homes, but we've got a long way to go yet.
I mean, getting back to the design side of things, I think a lot of people would imagine that an architect is just for rich people who want to build their own house.
No way. Definitely not. I mean, architects have got a massive role to play. I mean, whether it's architects working with the big house builders doing large estates, or whether it's someone getting a young local architect from around the corner to pop round and give them some advice on how to improve their existing home. I'm behind lots of projects like Architect in the House and schemes that have been set up by Shelter to get architects, working with local communities to show them what they can really do. It's a complete myth that architects are kind of unaffordable and out of touch. There's some great young practices out there that would be desperate to work on individual homes wherever you live. And it doesn't have to cost a lot for an architectural consultation. An architect can come around, give you some simple advice, and you've seen it yourself when I've made projects like the Home Show. The Home Show was very much about me going into ordinary houses, bungalows, semi-detached properties, terraced homes, apartments, and really trying to make those spaces work. And I mean, we're talking a lot today about street club and creating happiness within communities. But if you're not happy in your own home, then how can you be happy in that broader community? So you've got to work literally from the smallest scale house all the way out to the way we design our villages and our towns and cities.
Because architecture is not just about the building, it's about the whole environment, isn't it?
Everything. Well, architecture is about people more than anything else. I think that's what architecture should never lose sight of. A building is nothing without the people that inhabit it. And, architecture's got to be about an experience where people really love the places they are. One of my former tutors used to say to me that the best architecture in the world are the buildings that just make you smile. So we don't have to get caught up in some highbrow theoretical concepts about what makes a good building. If you just walk into a good building and it makes you smile, then that's absolutely everything. And it's the same with a domestic home, or whether it be a public building as well.
Yeah, so totally true.
You can tell it's so important to me. I mean, I get involved on all different levels, whether it is urban master planning schemes, whether it's talking to the government about where they might plan new villages or towns or cities, and also trying to work really constructively with the big house building industry to really get things right. So I think we're in a new era now where I think we've got a lot of good architects around, a lot of good designers, a lot of good town planners who really want to get it right. And it's really about that community engagement to make sure everybody gets what they want. So, I mean, I'm starting to sound like a politician, but for me, my passion's about just good homes for people, and good affordable homes that really improve everyone's quality of life. I mean, Shelter have just published some details saying 77,000 children are living in substandard temporary accommodation. Well, that's tragic. That's absolutely awful, because if the kids living in substandard accommodation, it's affecting their health, which is putting pressure on the NHS. It affects their education because they can't do their homework properly at home, so it affects their schools. A home, I think, honestly is probably the most important issue in Britain today, how we create good, affordable homes and engender that fantastic sense of community that Street Club are trying to do.
One more question, which is totally Wales orientated. We passed a law here, I think it was last year now, where all new builds need to have some sort of sprinkler system incorporated, and that's caused quite a lot of controversy with house builders. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think it's a good thing in the sense that it's improving safety standards in the home. That's always going to be a good thing. Sometimes you only need to put a sprinkler system in, though, if the other parts of the property don't comply with the building regs, so fire-rated doors, etc. I mean, you should be able to design a sprinkler system out, by getting other parts of the building right. I met a guy, funny enough, he was a chief officer to the fire brigade on the train the other day, and he was raving about sprinkler systems, saying they've become so much more affordable now, and I think he's right. So it's always something that people should consider. For it to be made legislation, if I'm honest, I'm not sure about it, because we're living in such a difficult economic time. There's so many other things that we could be doing to improve the ecology and safety of our homes. There's so many homes. There's 25 million existing properties in Britain, and so many of them have got poor insulation standards, haven't got double glazing in their windows, have got leaky, drafty windows and doors, and all of that stuff needs to be done. For example, boilers, combination boilers and things like that. There's some boilers in some houses that are over 10, 15, 20 years old. If your boiler is over 10 years old, even if it still works, it's not safe. And it's certainly not efficient because it's using a huge amount of energy for a low level of heat output. They're the sort of things that I think we should be focusing on and making an absolute priority. Sprinkler systems, yes, important if people can afford them, but I'm not sure if it should have been made legislation.
Well, obviously upgrading boilers and things like that, they all cost money, unfortunately.
Yeah, but there's no point in having money spent on a sprinkler system if your boiler's not working properly.
George, before you go, can you just tell the listeners where they can find out some more information?
Absolutely. If your listeners can go to www.streetclub.co.uk, that's a fantastic local community tool that enables all neighbours, wherever they live, whether it's rural or urban, to connect conveniently and safely together.
Okay, well, thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you so much. Nice to speak to you. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Radio Cardiff.